All right, so we're gonna do some lawn rolling today. We got this homemade lawn roller and we're gonna use the X758 to pull it. So we'll take a look at the lawn roller first, and then we'll do a little videoing of the lawnmower pulling it here. All right, so to start, all I did was take the snowblower off. You can tell underneath I still have the drive shaft going all the way through, just because it's April and in Wisconsin it's not quite time to put the snowblower away. We could always end up with a snowstorm, even though this year I think I only used the blower twice. We hardly got any snow at all. But instead of pulling everything off, I'm like, I'll just drop the blower and I'll leave the quick mount bracket with the cylinder on and the drive shaft and everything, just in case we got to throw the snowblower back on. And I need to clean the blower up anyway. It's all full of mud from kind of re-landscaping the lawn. All right, so the lawn roller. So we'll just do a quick talk about this. So my dad designed this, and I believe he took it off of another homemade design that he had borrowed from someone, and instead of always borrowing it, he just made his own. So I recall going to like the scrapyard and picking up this slotted or this metal that has holes in it. And why it has holes, I'm not sure. I think he got a good price and that's why he bought that. This was back in the, I'd say, mid 80s. I'd have to verify with him, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't remember either. I think he'd say the 80s as well. So he made up the frame, and initially the hitch came up to this point here where you can see all this weld is gobbed on here, and that's where the pin was. The problem was when you turn the lawnmower, it'd get too short and you end up riding up on this this piece here. So he actually extended the tongue, which it still can get close, but it's not as bad as what it was. And I think initially too, this bar on the front, that wasn't on there, and if your ground is really wet, it kind of sticks to the barrel, and then it just kind of gets larger and larger. So this kind of is like a cleaner, scrapes the barrel off if you get a lot of debris or mud stuck to it. And then to talk about the actual barrel part here, I believe this is an old pressure tank that must have failed. You can see there's some spots here that look like they were welded up. Obviously this is galvanized the way it looks, or maybe it was galvanizing, some of the galvanizing is wearing off. And then I believe he welded on the 2 points here. So there's a cap here with threads on it, and then on the bottom part here there's a plug with threads. So the way you fill this is you have to get the one end up and the other end down, and your fill end is going to be down. The top one here, you take that off so the air can breathe, because otherwise you just end up blowing your hose off, because as soon as you get water in there, the air pressure builds up and it'll actually blow your hose off. And that's just filled up with like a garden hose. So he's got this rubber hose here. You stick your hose end in here, your garden hose, and then on the end it's got threads on the inside. You know, you can see there's threads on the outside, but the inside threads, actually the inside threads screw on this, so this is going to be the end that goes down as you fill, and this is like your vent end here. I'm not entirely sure how he did the ends here, but there isn't any grease fitting, and this is kind of like a one-shot deal with this loop. It's welded to this, and then there's some sort of end on here. I don't want to touch that, but that's what kind of keeps the whole thing together. So we'll probably have to put some grease on that before we use it. It looks like it could be a little dry, especially if you do a lot of lawn rolling. He hasn't used this in quite some time, but there's always people that are interested in borrowing it because it's so handy. And when it's empty, this thing's not very light. It's really easy to move around, but when it's full, this thing is a beast. It's actually quite heavy. I'm not sure of the exact weight. I would guess it's got to be 30 gallons, maybe 50 gallons. I'm pretty sure this, like I said, is an old pressure tank, so I'm not sure what this holds. It's got to be at least a 30. So 30 times what, 7 or 8, whatever. I gallon of water weighs. And like I said, that might be more than a 30. It could be a 50. I'm not even sure. I'm not sure that he would know either at this point because it's been such a long time. But it works out well. I know neighbors have borrowed it, and it's one of those things that's just handy to have around. And when he finished it, he had it all painted. It was painted John Deere yellow to match the John Deere lawnmower he had. And back then, I think the lawnmower was would have been a John Deere 180. So, or like I said, we're gonna do some lawn rolling today. Lawn's pretty rough. I'll get this greased up, and then we'll get Thomas on here to start riding around. Hard to see on camera, but it does flatten it out, and especially where he's been rolling the same spot over and over again. He doesn't quite get the idea. I told him he needs to go the whole yard, but he ends up just doing the same circle over and over again, so that spot's getting really flat. So like you can see, maybe you can't see, this is really flat here, but this is still pretty wavy. I had him go over this spot right next to the trees here a little bit. You can kind of see the mud is kind of flattened out a little bit, but it's gonna take a little bit. The ground is wet, but it's not overly saturated. Wednesday we're supposed to get a bunch of rain, so I might try to do it after that again too, just to really get this flat. That's the first time he's rolled that. Next to the trees here, he's been on this part here probably 3 or 4 times already. It's just last year cutting grass, it was extremely rough, and once it gets dry, it's very, very bumpy. So I'm gonna try to flatten this out a little bit at least. All right, so we went over this quite a few times. It is actually really windy out here. I don't know, the weatherman made it sound like, oh, it's gonna be sunny and 50 some degrees, mid 50s. Well, it doesn't feel like it with that wind. But I think you can kind of see how flat we got it here. Where all the kind of the brown marks are here where there's no grass, that was all kind of pushed up, so we got that all flat. And actually in front of this tree here, where he went through this a few times, flattened it out quite a bit. I kind of went over what he did, and I kind of went back and forth, left and right, through all of this here, just to kind of flatten it out. It feels much flatter walking it, but it's definitely not perfect. I don't know if you can see it here, but this is actually really flat. This area right in front of this tree here, that turned out really nice. So I don't know, I think I'm gonna leave the water in the roller, and I'll just put it in the shed. I don't know if we're gonna get down below freezing again. And then, like I said, this week it's supposed to be kind of rainy, so if there's a day where it's not raining but we've had some rain, I'm gonna go over this again. There was no water squishing out here at all, and very minimal mud pickup as well. The roller actually stayed pretty clean. I was down by my parents yesterday, and there I couldn't even walk on their grass. It was just squishing water out everywhere. So we must have some pretty good drainage here. All right, so to wrap this up, I'm just going to talk briefly about the roller here. I think if I was to change or to improve anything on here, I would take this scraping edge here and I would move that out and leave a bigger gap than what there is. I think part of the problem is as this loop here on the end wears out, you get a little bit of slop in the drum here, and it'll sometimes rub against the scraping edge. So I think that could have been brought out probably at least a ½ inch off this barrel. It would still scrape, you just have a ½ inch of buildup first. And then on the end here too, I think I would do something different with that loop. Maybe drill in like a grease fitting on each side so you could apply grease to that, because the way it is, it's kind of hard to get grease on there. Other than that, I think it's a pretty solid design here. It works well. I kind of had my doubts when we started because it didn't seem like it was doing much, but if you go over the same spot a couple times, it actually flattens out pretty nicely. So all right, that's gonna be it for now.